Well, we are travelling north of the border now, and we're going to be taking a look at the Scottish property market and private rented sector now. And I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Cookson, Head of Research at lettingweb.com. So welcome to Property Tribes, Dan.
Thank you, Vanessa, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thanks, and to you. First of all, before we get going talking about Scotland and the scene you've got happening up there in property, tell us a little bit about Letting Web.
Letting Web is in essence a portal, and we advertise agent only at the moment properties to let. It's a pure lettings play. We don't touch the sales market, and we've got the biggest sort of compilation of advertised rentals in Scotland.
Fantastic. And with the data you get from the back end of the site, it enables you to produce a lot of interesting reports, and that's what we're going to move on to now, because in recent days we've heard that there is a kind of revival in the Scottish property market, particularly in the big cities, Edinburgh, Glasgow and Aberdeen. You've actually got a report from late last year. Could you tell us a little bit about kind of some of the data that's coming through?
Happy to do that. Yeah, we're tracking a very large volume of advertised rentals, and that huge stock. We can really go into very much detail about what's going on.
Very granular.
Absolutely, that's the key. It's being able to drill into those areas that are changing. If you just get an average for Scotland, it really doesn't tell you much.
No.
You can see so much, the differences between the cities. Aberdeen's market is so different to Edinburgh's, which is so different to Glasgow's. So you do need to be able to drill in. Our report is quarterly. The autumn report was recently published. That covers the autumn months up to the end of November. So it's done in quarters. We prefer that because you get more data and you can go more localised with your analysis. We have seen some increases in rents over the sort of tail end of the summer and the autumn. What's interesting though, and this is the Scottish have actually produced, the Scottish government have produced their own statistics, which are actually very welcome, and they're showing similar trends, but actually over 4 years, and it's the longer time series that are important here. The rents hardly gone up above inflation. So that's the sort of message that we're trying to get out, that single periods of rent increases need to be considered actually over the longer term.
Indeed. Well, of course, we always try and stress that property is a long-term investment, but you actually dig down on some quite interesting things, obvious things like rents and so on, but also tenure and things like that. So what kind of metrics on your report are going to be of interest to landlords?
Well, as you say, it's not just the rent levels or advertised rents. We're actually broader research. We're looking at the government data, and key information is the census. This is telling us exactly how many people in the private rented sector that there are, where they are, and the profile of those people. So you hear a lot about families in the PRS. In the most recent report, we actually do a very detailed analysis of that census, and it's interesting that families in the private rented sector with dependent children are actually living everywhere. More in the sort of least deprived parts of Scotland than there are in the most deprived. And it's actually there's a very even distribution, and it's not that private renting they choose to be there in many respects. And it's very interesting when you actually go very local with that analysis. You can actually see the patterns. You can see how centres of cities are very popular with the private rental market.
Yep, young professionals.
But it is spreading out. So it's a much more complex, nuanced sort of picture than the PRS bashers would like.
No, quite. And you've got some very neat features, and one of those is interactive, where you can fly over the map of Scotland and pick out details. So that's really helpful as well for landlords that are doing due diligence and thinking where they're going to invest.
Well, absolutely. I should have also mentioned there was, as well as a census analysis, we do look at the sales market. So we crunch the data from the registers of Scotland. So we actually have analysis of all the flats that have sold, and at a very local level look at those trends. So you can see again hotspots in terms of of the market. And you can see those areas where the market's actually not doing so well. So there's a lot of data there. And the maps actually are the best way of getting that sort of huge array of data across. So you can zoom in anywhere almost, within Scotland anyway, and see exactly what's going on.
Brilliant. Well, as we head into 2015, just to finish, Dan, where do you see the PRS in Scotland going? Because there's new government legislation coming out. There's the issue of oil prices affecting the Aberdeen area. Do you see opportunity and good things happening?
There's always opportunities. I mean, I think there's demand is absolutely there for a quality product, and that's, I think, what I would say is that the industry has come together over the last year or so, because there's been a lot of scrutiny of the industry, especially from government, that actually has resulted in I think a better response, a more mature response, and we are beginning to get better evidence about the sector and able to respond to some of those criticisms, and that's the key thing. Governments want evidence. Just sort of moaning doesn't cut it.
No.
You've actually got to say, look, actually, the figures, even your figures, are telling us that the market is actually behaving responsibly. There's always issues, and we can focus on those. But that's the encouraging thing, that the sector's coming together. We do have some very good evidence now to sort of talk about what we do in a way that we might not have done a few years ago. But yeah, the politicians, given a general election year, are really focusing on the PRS. Some would want to paint tenants as victims, and I think we know within the sector that the responsible landlords and agents, are doing a good job. And that's really the message I want to get across, that we can expand. There's other opportunities for build to rent as well. There's lots of institutional money that's very interested in the sector. You just got to get our act together in terms of information and presenting that to the powers that be, and stand up and defend.
Absolutely. Well, I'm with you on that one, and it's good to say that your winter report had the biggest ever response to your survey. So we know that there's
We did a huge tenant survey. I mean, obviously that went out. That was done in November, December. And we've got 8,000 responses from private tenants, and we touched on that in the report. So I mean, that was huge, bigger than any shelter survey, Scotland only. But the response was great. There are issues, response times to repairs might not be as good as it might, but in terms of rents, affordability, satisfaction levels, there's some very positive stories there, and that's another message that we've got to get across.
Absolutely. Well, we will join with you in getting across that message, Dan. It's really great to have your input into Property Tribes, and if you're interested in reading the Letting Web report, then you'll find a link under this video, and we invite you to go and dig down into the Scottish private rented sector with the help of Letting Web. So thanks very much, Dan, and perhaps we can catch up kind of quarterly and carry on this process of looking at how things are developing north of the border.
Good, be happy to, and I'll feed in any feedback through Property Tribes. I'll endeavour to get involved.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for joining us here at Property Tribes TV.
Thank you.